Okay, the head's now been thoroughly cleaned, and let's get it on the block. Perfect. The head is now on. Obviously we need to get some bolts on it, and we're not going to be using the standard bolt. We're going to use a nice set of ARPs. So that's the part number. Now, there's two ways that you can use the ARP studs. Either you can put them in the block first and then try and get the head down. I've tried it, it's really awkward. I don't like doing it that way. So my preferred way is to do it like this. You put the head on the block with no bolts, as you would normally, and then you thread each stud individually through, and then you get the nut. Now, when you're installing ARP head studs, don't use the standard factory settings. You need to use these settings. So they come with a set of instructions that tell you what to do. So it tells you to screw your studs into the block hand tight only. And it wants you to tighten the nuts in 3 equal steps to 80 foot-pounds with ARP fastener lubricant. It also recommends using the lubricant when installing each stud. This will give you a more consistent torque reading. So you get your washers, you get your nuts, so we don't need those right now. Then you have your bolts, and you can tell which ways these go in because you want the Allen side up. Now, for us, it's going to be a little bit more difficult screwing these in hand tight because they're going to be down here. So we will use an Allen head to do it, but we will still only do it hand tight. So don't go cranking these things in, because you'll crack something. So it's a 3/16 Allen key because America. We're going to be fancy and use it out of a bottle, but it normally comes in a little pouch. But trust me, it's going to be a lot easier to apply this with the little brush. So we don't need loads on here. Just an even coating. We're going to drop the bolt in. So still hand tight, not really any resistance. If you do feel any resistance, you can just back it back out and then back in again. And then we can just feel, we can't really apply any torque because this is so short. Now we know it's in. Then we get the next one. And we follow exactly the same process. Drop the bolt in. And then we're going to do it up, hand tight. Now we've got 14 of these studs to do. I'm not going to make you watch me do all 14, even sped up, because it's not that interesting. So we'll come back when all of these studs are in the block. Okay, this is where things start to get a little bit messy. We need to cover all of the washers now in the same assembly loop. And what we're going to do for safety is we'll put the old spark plugs back in here so we don't lose anything down there. Right, excellent. Not going to lose anything down there now. Then I like to use a pair of pliers to drop them down. Same with the other one. Good coating on both sides. And drop it down. I'm going to make my way through all of them. I won't make you watch me, and I'll let you know when I'm done. Right, all the washers are done, and we're going to do exactly the same thing with the nuts. So you want to apply it to the base surface and on the threads. And we'll grab our pliers and place the nut on. Then we use our 1/2 inch socket to start the threading on. I'm only going to put it on a couple of threads for now. We'll worry about tightening it up later when we're clean, but it's exactly the same. I'll follow the same process for all of them, screw them on a few threads, and then we'll come back when I've got clean hands and these are all threaded on. Right, so I've got all of the nuts on. They're only on by a couple of threads, so what we'll do now is we'll screw them all down hand tight. This way we can feel if we're caught up on a washer. Right, so that's all in hand tight. So according to the paperwork, we want to go to 80 foot-pounds. So that's 108 Newton meters. And we want to do that in 3 steps. So I'm going to do 40, 80, and then 108. And we're going to go in the normal sequence that we would. So we'll start in the center and work out both ways. So just make sure all of these are just about hand tight first. Okay, so we're hand tight on all of these, so let's go for 40 first. So as long as we count to 14 each time, we know we've done all of them. On some of these you can feel the stud twist as well, so it's just settling down into where it needs to be. So we've done 40, so let's go for 80 now. Really wish I had a 1/2 inch version of this, so fingers crossed we don't break this. So now we can go to the full 108. Here we go. 14. Now, we're going to go back on the same torque and then go out again, because as this is then pulled down, the torque will have dropped off slightly in the centre. So that you might not be able to see it on camera, but there's a tiny amount of movement. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now, at this point, you would then do the 3 small M6 bolts on the outside. So you've got one here, one on each side of the back. Those go to 10 Newton meters. I'm not going to be doing those right now because we're going to plate those bolts. We'll zinc plate them, and they're not quite ready yet. Realistically, for what we're doing right now, doesn't matter, we'll just put them on later. But you definitely do need them, and they definitely do need to be torqued, so yeah, don't forget them. Now, we've finished torquing the head down, as we're going to do it. Obviously we've got 3 bolts to do later. We'll put the cam gears on. I did check that these are in the correct position. We've got some quite nice cam gears for this one. So we've got 2 adjustable HKS cam gears. So these look really nice. We'll put them on here for now. I'm not sure whether I'm going to plate the bolts that go on here. We'll have a look and decide later. So these are the adjustable gears. So hopefully we can make use of these on the tune. So I'm just going to put these on hand tight for now until I decide what to do with these, whether I'll plate them or not. And we've got the same for the exhaust side. Okay, so there you have it. These are on temporarily. Well, they might be permanent, we might torque them up, we'll see what we want to do with those. We'll pop the cam covers back on to keep all of any dirt out of here. And then I think we can, yeah, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, I've decided to torque these bolts as they are and not plate them. So the best way to do this is to pop the cam cover off, get a spanner, you can't see it, it's here, on the camshaft to counter hold it. And I'm going to torque all of these bolts to 18 Newton meters. So this side's actually already done. If you don't counter hold, the cam will spin, and obviously we don't want that because then potentially the valves are going to contact the piston. We'll do exactly the same on this side. Right, we finally got our new spark plugs, so we can take the old ones that we put in temporarily out. These are the plugs that we're going to be using. We're going to torque these down to 25 Newton meters, but we'll run them down first by hand. now our cam gears are bolted down, we can pop the cast bracket on. And the bolts for these are going to be 25 Newton meters. Right, I'm now on an exercise to clean up my floor because it's full of parts and bolts. So I'm going to try and bolting everything on that I can do as I am now. I think the last thing that I can put on before we need to do any work on anything else is the power steering pump bracket. So we'll go and grab that, put that on, and we're going to put the bolts up to 45 Newton meters on that one. Right, I've been doing some bolt plating for a while now because I've got quite a few bolts to plate. Hopefully just bring them back to how they need to be. Now we can continue what we were doing and trying to get all the parts off the floor and back onto the block. So we'll go through now, and anything that we can put on, we will. Okay, we'll start with the oil filter housing. It's really important to replace this O-ring here. They get really damaged really hard and they crack and they don't seal well at all. Nissan doesn't list one, but I'll put a link for one in the video description. They're not that difficult to find. I got one from a Universal set, so it should be pretty easy. So new gasket to go on. I make these myself, and these are available for sale, so I'll put these again in the video description. And they do fit just like an OE one. So let's get this on. These are going to go to 20 Newton meters. And now to keep any dirt out of the engine, we'll pop one of these on, which is my preferred filter of choice for these. Okay, we're going to put the small M6 head bolts in. So these have just had a quick plate. And we're going to put these into 10 Newton meters. If you can get a torque wrench in there, which is TBC. So stock all three of those. We needed a short 10mm, a long 10mm and a 10mm crow's foot. Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing we can get in is the thermostat. This isn't a new one, we've just given it a clean because it looks okay, operates okay. And we're going to install it with the jiggly ball up. Like so. Now we can install our thermostat neck, so I've given this a bit of wrinkle black paint as well. You can use a gasket for this application if you choose, but we'll be using some more ultra black. So we use my preferred method of just dabbing it on with the tube. And these bolts are going to get put in, and we'll do these up to 20 Newton meters. So that is the thermostat installed. Okay, so let's keep going. We'll put the engine mounts on next. So we are missing a bolt for this engine mount, but we've got a new one on its way. I'm going to torque these up to 50 Newton meters. Then we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. Right, next thing to go on is the knock sensors. These are going to go to 20 Newton meters. In fact, I might take this opportunity to fit this part first before we install this last sensor. A little bit of sealant on the end. Right, now at this stage I like to prop up the front of the engine with a little scissor jack here and a piece of wood. It's probably not necessary, but you have got a lot of weight on the front of this pulling on the engine stand, so can't hurt to balance it out, especially when you're moving it and that weight is wagging on the front, so can't hurt. But if you're wondering what that is, that's why it's there. So we'll pop the water pump in now. Okay, so we've got everything nice and clean. I'm going to do exactly as we did before. So we're just going to dab this on. And that should be just what we need. We'll use those two bolts to hold it in position. So we're going to wind these in very gently. I'm going to start here and work out. So I'll do this side first. Well, I'll do these, and then come back for those. So these 12s are 20 Newton meters. This little 10mm is 8. Double check this one. Cool. And the 14s are 35. Now we can get our pulley out the way. Obviously these bolts aren't being done up for the final time because our fan will go here. I think I've said this multiple times, but I think this genuinely should be the last time that we fit this. We'll add our tensioner with our freshly plated spring. So we'll have 50 Newton meters for this one. And obviously we can't do this one until we get the timing belt, and we're waiting on a part from Japan for that. Now we can have the oil pressure switch back in. This is on a tapered thread. You can also see I've added this pipe back on here. Okay, so I don't think that's going to come undone. Hand tight's probably okay, like I said, it's tapered thread. Okay, we're going to put the exhaust manifold on now, just to keep any dirt and debris out of these ports. This is a log style manifold, the same kind as OEM. It's not an OEM one, but it's the same kind of style. If you were putting an OEM setup back on, you'd want to have put this bracket that goes here for the crossover pipe on first. Once this manifold is on, you cannot get this on. So if you're putting that on, put those on first. I'm going to come back when this is done because some of these are quite awkward, but we're going to torque these up to 30 Newton meters. Okay, so it's time to get the oil pump bolts on. We're going to tighten these down to 10 Newton meters. The reason I went around a few times is for the gasket to settle and for this to sit in properly. So I went around 3 times, but you kind of get a feel for it. In the factory manual it doesn't specify you need to do that, but I know that the torques end up a little bit off if you don't, so I always do. We also got some new parts, which is exciting. We got a new backing plate. I don't know if you can see, it's slightly bent that way. So we're going to face so it bends towards the block. Like so. We also got a nice new gear, which is brilliant because if you remember we had to break the old one to get it off. So to avoid that in the future, what we're going to do is just put a bit of anti-seize, especially in the keyway. This always makes a mess. We might have to tap this on. So you can see, even with no corrosion, they're quite a tight fit. Perfect. So you heard the tone change, so that's fully on. Okay, so all our timing marks are aligned. So the crank is mostly aligned, it's a little bit off, but not too far off. Our cams are somewhat aligned. So our tensioner is loose, so we can swing it out the way. So we can swing our tensioner out the way. Now we can install our timing box. It has a rotation direction and has these marks here that you can line up with the points on the cams and the crank. Right, I'm going to move this so I can get a bit better access, but we're just going to line these points up and I'll come back when it's on and those points are lined up. Right, okay, I've got that aligned. It's pretty easy when you've got the space and you can actually get in there, but I can't get in there where the camera is. So now the process is to slacken off this nut here and allow the tensioner to apply tension to the belt. We'll put this washer back on, which fits that way around, like so. Doesn't really do much now, but will hold effectively the belt on the sprocket. If you don't use that, the belt will walk off and you'll have a sad time. So the factory manual suggests that you remove the spark plugs, but I can't bother to do that, so we're not going to do that. And what we're going to do is turn the engine over by 2 rotations. So 2 rotations of the crank is a full rotation of a camshaft. We're going to counter hold this. And torque the tensioner to 50 Newton meters. That's how you install a timing belt on an RB engine. You can check the tension here. If you have it too tight, it's not good. If you have it too loose, also not good. Don't worry about the lines lining back up with where you set them. They won't until you've done a number of extra rotations. It takes about 10 minutes, so we're not going to bother with that. But with the belt tension, you should be able to turn the belt by about 45 degrees. If you can turn it 90 degrees, it's too loose. If you can't turn it 45 degrees, it's too tight. But that is how you want it. Right, okay, I've done a few little bits while I've been away. So I've put the dipstick tube back on. This is actually backwards for the manifold that we're going to fit, but I'll show you that later. I popped this bit of hose back on with the clip up here. This currently doesn't have any fittings on it, so we're going to put those fittings on now. Just giving those a quick de-rust and plated those. So yeah, let's put those clips on and we can move on to the next thing. Normally this clip would clip to the bottom of the intake manifold like that, but we don't have the right intake manifold to do that. So we will try and mount it. Well, we'll see how we can get on. Maybe we can mount it to the manifold that goes in like that. We'll see. We should also make a bracket for this to keep the weight off that bracket, so maybe we can do something off here, but we'll see again for that one. But now I think it's time to put the sump on, because the fitting has finally arrived for the pickup. Okay, we're going to fit the sump gasket now. I tried fitting it upside down, didn't really work, so I flipped the engine over and we'll fit this properly. Like so. The bolts will be done in a pattern starting from the middle and going outward. So we'll start here and then we'll go out like this both sides. We're going to do these up to 6 Newton meters. So this is good. So we have a little bit of sealant here, but not loads. So whichever amount is normally here is the same on the inside, and that's just about enough, maybe bordering on a little bit too much, but it's not going to cause us an issue. Anything more than that we don't want.